My name is Nina Hathaway. I'm back at Queen's after about 5 years doing several postdocs. I'm here as the coordinator of postdoctoral affairs in the School of Graduate Studies. I'm new to my role, and I'm also here with my colleague Heather Merla, as Alex said. So big thank you to Heather again for helping us with this presentation. And thanks to her for joining. A little bit more background about me. I did my PhD here at Queen's in art history, and then went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York for 3 years as a fellow, and then to Yale University, where I was a postdoctoral fellow in their art history department, teaching several courses. So that was a lot of fun, some varied experience as a postdoc myself, which I'm happy to talk to any of you about if you're interested. So my official email is postdoc@queensu.ca. So if you have any questions, you're always free to reach out. So Alex.
And I'll ask you to put that in chat as soon as possible, Nina, because I'm sure folks will want to reach out to you. But I'm Alex Pedersen. Please call me Alex. I use the pronoun she, her. And I got my PhD here at Queen's as well, but in human geography. So I'm a little bit of an outlier in the physics world, but I'm really excited that I'm here because of this cross-disciplinary connections and thinking. I applied for postdocs as I was in my second and final year of my PhD, or my second to last and final year of my PhD. Got waitlisted twice, got so close, but now I think, and I'm going to steal this from Raman because you mentioned it, I think I'm a much better person to help other people get postdocs than maybe have a postdoc myself. So I don't have that experience, but if I can help you in any way, let me know how that works. And our guest postdocs today, I'm going to invite you each in order of your appearance to unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves. We're so fortunate and lucky to have you with us. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the invite today, guys. That's amazing. And I feel like really happy that we're able to communicate with the COVID-19 situation. Everything is really not really good, not as used to be. So it's really nice you guys like putting this all together, like to communicate and to reach out to the community and be able to listen and learn and share our ideas and thoughts on this. So my name is Abdul Rahman Al-Ashraf. I go by Raman, and I'm Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, and I did my PhD in Malaysia with the focus on infectious diseases. So my background is on microbiology. In 2021, I joined Beatty Waters Center as postdoctoral fellow. We are trying to analyzing wastewater samples to understand, or trying to understand, the circulation of COVID-19 into the environment by analyzing wastewater samples. So my interest is on developing tools to better understand the dynamics of infectious diseases in community. And I will put my email as well in the chat if you guys would like to have further discussion on this, or you're thinking about something similar. So I would love to hear from you, and I will hand it over to my colleagues. Thank you so much.
Hi, Karim Miller. So I'm glad to be with you today. I'm a postdoc at the Faculty of Law. I just started this year, and I work in the areas of constitutional law, human rights, legal theory. I got my PhD last year at the University of Ottawa. And I'm really excited actually about this presentation. I went through all the material. I think that myself, I will have like a few things to learn from you. And I hope to be able also to share a few useful ideas based on my own experience, especially regarding all the application for funding. So thanks.
Yeah, may I invite you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. Hi everyone, I'm also very happy to be here and share my experiences. So I'm from India. I did my PhD over there in physics. My area of expertise is particle physics. So I mainly associated with instrumentation and for building detectors by which we can detect these interesting particles. So I can tell you a lot about it if you're interested, and I will share my email too. So this is my second postdoc here in Queens. Before coming to Canada, I was in Poland for 1 year for doing my first postdoc. So yeah, I think you can all use a lot of experience from my side because I'm new to this and I recently applied for the postdoc. And yeah, so that's all. Thank you.
Well, and thanks to all of you, each with varying experiences. I imagine different postdoctoral applications, processes, projects, communities that you would be a part of. And so such a wide breadth of experience that we get to draw on today. So as Nina and I go through the next few slides to our postdoctoral fellows, please jump into the chat, tell us what you think and add your comments, or please do join in if you have an experience that you would like to share. We do have a number of slides to get through, and I know that we're going to try and hold as much space as we can at the end for larger questions. But if we don't get to those questions too, we absolutely want you to put those questions in the chat so we can share them back with Nina and the postdocs, or we can look for other ways to present them to you in the future. But sorry, Nina, I took over.
No, that's totally my fault. But on that note, since I've already given you a sneak preview of our next slide, we'll move on to the first point that we'd like to discuss, which is how to find a postdoctoral position in the first place. So we've kind of broken this down into the who, when, and where categories. And so to start with the who piece, again, you cannot find a better resource in many ways than your colleagues, than your supervisor, a mentor. There are so many really wonderful conversations that you can have when you're starting to think about a postdoc, whether you want to do one in the first place, and where that might take you. So starting those conversations with your colleagues, with your current supervisor or another academic mentor is a really great way to start thinking about where you could go with your postdoc. You can meet potential supervisors at conferences. Again, thinking about networking, it's hugely important for you, not only at the PhD level, but also in thinking about your next steps. To really build an international network if that's possible. You don't have to think about doing a postdoc in your home country. You can really go anywhere in the world where you find an institution that's doing the kind of research that resonates with you. So I think you can really cast a very broad net, and the way to kind of learn more on the ground about each institution is to meet people. And so the who piece is a really big part of this search for your postdoctoral position, whether it's your first postdoc or your second or even your third. So certainly who you know can go a long way to helping you find a postdoc. You can talk to a program officer at a funding agency. They can give you really fantastic specifics about each award, each fellowship, information about eligibility, whether or not you have to be a citizen of that country to be eligible, and can also alert you to other fellowships that agency offers. You might have reached out with one particular opportunity in mind, and if that isn't maybe the best fit for you, they might be able to recommend something else. So again, networking kind of on all of these levels, whether it's with your supervisor, your colleagues, or with people you haven't necessarily met before at a funding agency, all of these avenues are really great resources for you to explore. And then, of course, also kind of close to home, if you have a postdoc office at your institution, or you have someone who's taking care of postdocs where you are, you can always contact them. They may have, well, they should have a lot of detailed information about the postdoc opportunities that are available where you are, but they can also connect you with their own colleagues and let you know about opportunities abroad as well. And in terms of the when, you really can't go wrong starting to plan as early as possible. Applications do take a considerable amount of time, and you really want to be able to give them all you have. You want to write a very detailed and tailored application. It can sometimes feel tempting to, have that CV done and just send it out everywhere, but you really do want to kind of make adjustments and take the time to make sure every application that you're putting together is super specific for every single opportunity that you have. So from that perspective, it's important to start planning early. And then, of course, if you want to move seamlessly, if you are at the PhD stage, if you want to move seamlessly into a postdoc right after you graduate, you do need to start thinking about where you want to go for your postdoc well in advance, because you will often need to be applying at least a year, if not more, before you graduate. So you'll need to be thinking about your potential supervisor at the new postdoc position. You'll need to have referees secured and really know where you want to go, what those applications involve, and be ready to submit by the deadlines. So the next point about deadlines is perfect. They all have their own deadlines, and some awards have internal procedures and some don't. So you really need to do that research as early as possible, so you know when to submit what and where, because it can be a little bit complicated. And finally, where you can go to find a postdoc. Websites are really great. You can, you can search for university websites where you think you might be interested in going. They'll have human resource websites, or even departmental websites will often list postdoc opportunities. So again, if you've met a colleague at a lab somewhere and you search for that website, it should be a good way to find out whether there's an opportunity available for you. And that also goes for universities' HR websites. They're also a really great place to look. Social media is a great tool as well. It's good for so many different things, but you can also check out social media channels to see postings about postdoc opportunities. Conferences are fantastic too. So kind of working together with that networking piece, you might meet someone, have a really great conversation, and they might say, oh, I know a colleague of mine who's got a lab with some positions available, and it sounds like your work will work well together with that colleague of theirs. So it's really great to just talk to people at conferences. You never know who you're going to meet. The same is true for departmental speaker series. And finally, the tri-agency fellowship opportunities have websites with very detailed information about their funding sources. Yes, Alex, sorry.
We have a good question in the chat. I just didn't want it to go unanswered, but
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure if there is, and I'm going to read it out loud. Can you point to a particular website that posts current postdoc positions in Canada, US, Europe? I know about academic transfers, and I mean, even in my own postdoc searches, I never saw a nationalized one. But I could be wrong.
So I think, and I don't want to promise anything, of course, but I have heard discussions in the works for the Canadian Association of Postdoctoral Administrators, trying to gather all of the Canadian opportunities together on their website. So it's been recognized that that's something that postdocs and potential postdocs would really benefit from. So I think there is going to be an effort to put something like that together in the future. But like you say, Alex, I'm not sure that there's something out there currently that will collate all of those opportunities into one place, but hopefully that comes out soon.
I will say, as our own internal plug, you'd seen our own recruitment
Yes.
tool where we were trying to put all of the postdoc positions for astroparticle physics in Canada up on that website, but other disciplines can follow suit.
Yes. So I've covered the who, when, where, and I will now invite our postdocs to talk a little bit about why you might want to do a postdoc. So Corinne, yes, please.
Yes. So I think that, you explained very well how those questions of the who, the when, the where are so important, but sometimes are a bit difficult to answer. And how do I make the right choice? Do I choose the right supervisor? Do I choose the supervisor the same way that I've chosen my PhD supervisor? And maybe there are so many people who are listening and they don't even know if they want to do a postdoc. And for me, useful question that helped me to answer those underlying questions was the why. Why doing a postdoc? And is it really like kind of a PhD? What's the added value? And and for me, I must say that it really helped me to finish the PhD, thinking about what's next and having an exciting project to move forward. It helped me to have the motivation to finish writing my dissertation and think about a bit more long-term, in 5 years, in 10 years, what are the skills, the goals I want to achieve. And then it really helps you to decide where do I want to work, with who I want to work, and to think a bit, no matter if you're looking for another type of job, just looking at the skills you may have developed during your PhD and looking at maybe not only your weaknesses, but maybe what you want to improve in terms of skills, of knowledge, and think a bit more broadly, not only about one specific project, but where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? And then it really helps to choose the right place, the right team, the right supervisor, and finish this PhD. Finish it. Yeah, so I don't know if my colleagues may want to add on this.
Yeah, so you guys actually put it like really nicely. Understanding why I'm going to do my postdoc would really help you figuring out what is postdoc would be about, what exactly you are going to do. I'm interested like in a professorship. I'm interested in industry. I'm interested in completing my let's say my study more like professionally. I'm interested in residency. I'm interested in clinical fellowship. So that will add. Once you have the answer for what exactly you are going, not what exactly why you are going to do this, then you will start like, go through people and publications. One thing I think that would be really helpful here. Like when you read papers like in the same interest of you, the same background, just reach out to the corresponding author. Just ask them like, I would like actually to meet with you. That's what I'm looking to do. What's your advice on this? What do you think that I can do to improve my situation so I would be ready to my next step? That will take you a long way. Sitting with the people that you're imagining yourself will be working with, trying to understand what exactly they will be working on, will help you a lot in the preparation for your postdoctoral fellowship application, and at the same well for the project that you will be working on. And if it didn't work, you already have your connections, and they will connect you with people. They're looking for someone like you. So yeah, that would be really nice to understand why. Once you have why, then you write to the right people, ask them, and they will guide you along the way. Yeah, so that would be my thoughts on this point.
Wonderful. Neha, why did you do a PhD? I'm really curious. What would you share?
Yeah, so I think for me, the why was mostly because in PhDs, we are basically learning things, right? I mean, we're learning to, say, in my case, learning to use our equipment or our hardware. But when we come for postdoc, we can, based on the learning, we can implement it somewhere, right? And we can make our own projects. So it is not more like a guided project. It is like your project then. And then you can, deliver something, whatever you have learned in, because PhD is a longer duration of time. Whereas for postdocs, you can choose for say 1 year, 2 years, depending upon where you're applying. And in that short duration of amount, you have to own your own project. So it's not like you're working and, you're supposed to take data or something like that. You have to, build things by your own, put together your ideas and, so I think for me, the big why was that. That's why I came for a postdoc. Yeah.
I really appreciate that big motivation. Why, right? That's the driver of it. Then all the who, when, and Raman, what you were saying too, of even embedding yourself with those individuals, right? Even if a postdoc doesn't come up for those, they might know somewhere else that does, and you've already proven yourself within that community.
Absolutely. Just like reach out to people, you will be surprised how much they really want to help. I mean, like you think about like, yeah, they do have like, let's say, I don't know how many thousand citations. They're like super busy. They will not reply to me. No, most of the time they reply, they will schedule a meeting and they will have you. They will like, yeah, what you're looking for, that would be our suggestions. Do you think that would be a good fit for you? Yes or no? So just reach out to people and ask. That's it. That's where to start. Yeah.
Also sometimes like you get to meet the group also before, like if you're going to some place. So in my case, they asked me to meet the group members and I had an individual chat with everyone. So you can really see whether you are fit, you will be, fitting in the environment and the work, the type of work they're doing. Would you be willing to do something like that? So yeah, if you reach out to people, definitely not only to the supervisor, it will be good if you could connect with the group also. It can help you in deciding faster.
And just, if I just add to finish, like a concrete example of how this question helped me to find the right place, the right supervisor for me. For example, in my work, I work in constitutional theory, and I apply a specific framework and a specific methodology to medical assistance in dying to answer very concrete questions. And then when I was finishing my PhD, I've been advised, oh, have you think about maybe for the postdoc to work in health law and to work with a supervisor that is really an expert in medical assistance in dying. There's a lot of things to do. It was right. But then I think the time to think of why I was really interested and driven in my research, what was the core of it? And if I look beyond the specific project in 5 years, and then actually the core of it was related to constitutional theory. And then I decided to choose a supervisor and a place with a methodology that this is what I can do beyond medical assistance in dying. And now I'm really happy with my choice because I can still combine and add other projects related to this methodology that has nothing to do with the specific case on medical assistance in dying, and that's still in line with the place I've chosen in the supervisor. So yes, I think maybe it can resonate to for some of you.
It's very relatable to my situation. So I'm also like that. Yeah. So I figured out that this is what I wanted to do, and then I got to know only in this postdoc. So yeah, very relatable. Very good point.
I wouldn't mind asking just one other clarifying question that's coming out of the chat, and then I think we should move on because we could spend the rest of the 2 hours on this one, I think. But there is another question again from the same participant around what about when you go for a postdoc working under supervisor for a project that's already defined, and maybe we don't have an audience member who is like that, but there certainly are projects where it is not dreamed up necessarily by the postdoc, but that there's an opportunity within an existing research experiment or group that they need to fill with a postdoc, and they put out an offering, right? And so there's also those opportunities as well, if not inspired by your own methodological or theoretical pushes.
I think you can ask in the interview itself. So in the interview, after the interview, there is a 5-minute window where they will be asking, like, what do you want? What do you expect from the experiment or, your study? So that is the right time, I think, to ask the specific question, that whether it is predefined or I would have to design my own goals. So I think they definitely will clear this up right away. So be aware when you're applying and then ask this question. Yes.
And what I like what you said there too is you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. This is your postdoctoral fellowship. It needs to work for you as well, right?
Absolutely. And kind of on that note, it is going to be a significant change for you and if you have a partner, family members. There are so many considerations when thinking about postdocs, especially. You may be moving for only a year or 2 years. So really feeling grounded in the why and knowing that it is going to work for you from doing that interview and feeling like you're also interviewing your potential supervisor and your colleagues, like you say, Alex. That's a really good thing to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, if I may add to this, that's very, very, very important because, yeah, I mean, like, you should like really understand or like, yeah, make sure that you will be happy with the project that you're working on and you're meeting the expectations from day one. So I always like ask this question, what's the expectations will be from me for like the first 3 months, and how do you see this project moving forward? Yeah, once I have the answers for these questions, I have in my mind where this project is moving, what's the plan for the next year, then I will be able to say like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking to do, yes or no. And it's fine, just you have to be clear whether your answer is yes or no. Just be clear from day one. Have a good communication is the best. The lack of communication what really comes in the way. Yeah.
On that planning, shall we move? Yeah, planning for postdoc. This was mine, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Well, planning for a postdoc, and we have a number of points that are not exhaustive. I'm sure there are some on here that we may have missed, but let's start off with what we've got. So planning early. And what I've heard from the last slide too from folks is thinking about it 2 years ahead when you're in the middle of your PhD about where you want to go, but even thinking further than that and making your 5-year plan or even your 10-year plan when you're thinking about applying is a really, it's a good exercise, I think, even in strategizing where your own career in life will go. Publication plans, right? Can you publish your doctoral work that's already in progress? Can you bolster some of the publications that you have coming out of your PhD to help when you're doing interviews or looking for postdocs, when people are making assessments of how you've performed in your PhD to know if you would perform well in your postdoc? Can you change an essay or a conference paper into an article? There are lots of ways that hopefully your current PhD supervisor, if not your colleagues or other postdocs, might be able to help you or give you advice on how to help build some of those publication records that you'll need in the future. Research proposal plans. Consider potential research ideas as you work on your dissertation. As you're writing that final chapter, those things that you couldn't address, those gaps that were existing that you really wanted to explore, but you needed to finish the PhD. Maybe those are the first earmarks of what you'd like to do for a postdoc. But remember, a postdoc is not a second PhD. Thank you for that qualifier. Identify major fellowships, eligibility requirements, and deadlines. Always read the application guide. Right, that's my former life as a research projects grant advisor. The fine print maketh and taketh away. Network with potential mentors, and this was said in the last slide as well, whether they're your mentors at different institutions, research groups, referees that you've had, for example, at conferences even too. Get out there and make your name known, right? Look for the groups, individuals, projects that you want to align yourself with early. We always promote more and more networking. Research major faculty grants. Who is the named person in research in a department? Who's bringing in a lot of big grants that could potentially take on postdoctoral fellows? When new faculty members are coming on board at universities, they sometimes have small stipends given to them by the School of Graduate Studies to bring on new postdocs. But it's often easier to go with much larger group collaborations because they have money readily available. So definitely checking out who you're going to be working with and what research grants they're on. Most of that, if it's Tri-Council, is publicly available. Make sure your CV is up to date and ready to send out to potential supervisors. I like to revisit mine every term, every semester, where I'm often putting in my guest lectures, other small things that I'm doing, because my goodness, if I don't do that, I forget. You do a lot of things in your PhD. Oftentimes we don't always recognize some of the work that can be translated into our CV. So getting your CVs assessed, having a peer or having a professional review it through your own expanding horizons, if there's a session on that, or other opportunities across the universities, career services, I know would do CV reviews. Do spend the time with your CV to make sure that it is the most up-to-date possible. Be cautious about cold calls. And while I do absolutely agree with informational interviews, asking people for support, make sure that you prepare emails to those potential supervisors carefully and you tailor each one. Having received emails from students who are looking to work in research with me, even just knowing that they checked out my website, that they've done a little bit of research on me and they've taken the time to understand who I am and the projects that I'm involved with, made me want to lean into those students and respond to them right away. And I'm sure that's the same case with faculty and postdocs. Faculty members get, if not hundreds of emails a day, a week, a month from potential people. So standing out as someone who has done their research, who is professional and respectful, will help you along the way. Look for opportunities outside your specialization. And what I'm seeing now in the granting world and the funding is everything is looking at cross-disciplinary and collaboration in the future. And so I would personally, and if anybody else wants to jump on this, I would recommend thinking about that, about how you could be outside of your own specialization, bringing those skill sets that you've developed in your PhD to an alternate group. That might be the way that a number of research funding goes in the future, and you could be ahead of the curve by thinking in that way. And then again, looking internationally. right? Of course, I'm in the position where I'm promoting the Canadian Astroparticle Physics Institute in the national network, but there are so many opportunities for postdocs, and stretching your research goals and your international wings to try and expand those opportunities might be a great opportunity for your research in your 5-year plan down the future. And so, am I missing anything in this planning? I've kind of run through a big extensive list, but is there anything to highlight that I've missed or I've not been paying attention to the chat? Someone else jump in. Nina, what do you think? Anything to add?
Sorry, Nia or Nina?
Sorry, excuse me. Miha actually did add something in the chat, and that's what
Okay.
I was looking at her name and then looking at you. Excuse me, Miha. What was your opinion? Do you want to throw that in there? Yeah, it might be earlier. It's if I'll just read it out. In your opinion, it does not impact the postdoc opportunities because depending on where you're doing your PhD and the time of completion. And so I think that was just a comment based on one of the earlier points.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Thank you. I like the one question that's in the chat, and maybe we can return to it in a larger forum at the very end. So I don't want to ignore it now, but I will put it out there as the question about how much time spending a postdoc affects your opportunities of finding an assistant professor position. And I don't know if there's a universal answer to that ultimately. So maybe it's something that we can expand upon in the question and answer period at the end.
I think it's also something you can speak to in a potential interview as well, because different postdocs will give you different experiences. So I think as long as you're able to really speak to what you've learned through the postdocs and really make a good case for yourself and why those postdocs were good decisions for you and what they've done for you as a scholar, as a researcher, I think that's kind of the best way of looking at that, to make sure that you've done those postdocs for the right reasons and that you're able to really explain to a potential colleague, a faculty member, why they were beneficial to you.
Yeah, and if I may add, hopefully one day, like all of us and my colleagues will be professors at some point. That's what we were looking for. But yeah, I think like time and how many years, how many months, how many postdocs, it doesn't really matter. Just the set of skills that you have, the set of experience that you have. So if you're hiring a postdoc, if his PhD is done, like let's say in 3 years or 6 years, is he good enough to run the lab work? And the same thing as well, like if his professor, like if he's like now really ready to take on the rules and the responsibilities to be assistant professor or start his appointment. So just like whether like they do have the set of skills, yes or no. It's not how many years or yeah. It doesn't really change. That's my opinion. I think that's what's the case for most of the postdocs that I know so far.
Thank you for that response, Raman. May we move on to the next slide for time?
Okay, so this is a very general overview of some key elements of your postdoc application. Typically, you will see the request for a research proposal, a record of achievement, including your publications, your presentations, and awards, along with your referees' letters of reference. And those are incredibly important. I think when people review applications, it really, the way the personal touches that references add to those letters really go a long way in convincing those who are reading your applications just how outstanding you are as a candidate. So I think being really selective and having those conversations with potential references early on and sharing your application materials, making sure that you've given them your most up-to-date CV, for instance, maybe talking to them, setting up a Zoom or a Teams meeting or going for coffee if it's possible, or tea, and then talking about some of the most recent projects you've been involved with and really giving them as much information as possible to go on will make a huge difference for your letters of reference. And then again, if you're asking for the same referees to speak to your skills and qualifications for different applications, making sure you've really explained to them how those different opportunities differ so they can highlight the best skills that you have for each of those applications. I know in my own experience, I've asked several of the same supervisors and colleagues to write for various opportunities that I've applied for. And so you really need to make sure that you're telling them exactly why it is you want each of these positions and getting them to write specific letters that support you for that exact role. Sometimes you'll be asked for a teaching dossier. So I know the Center for Teaching and Learning will help you work on your own teaching dossiers. So if you're here at Queen's, that's a resource that we have for you to help develop that. It can also just be a really great exercise for you to think about something like your teaching philosophy. Sometimes that's the kind of question you might get asked in an interview for a postdoc if it involves teaching. So it's always good to think about who you are as an educator and think about some courses that you might teach. I know if you have to or had to do comprehensive exams as part of your PhD, those can really be helpful topics to think about in the context of courses that you might be able to offer down the line. So think about whether or not you might be asked for a teaching dossier as well. And you might also be asked to demonstrate ability to work independently in a lab or a field. And that would be dependent on the kind of postdoc that you're applying for. And again, so for the research proposal, that could be as short as a page. I know for the Banting applications, the initial part of that application that Queen's processes starts with a letter of intent. And so that does have to, that project really kind of has to be condensed into a single page. So you need to have both that kind of high level sense of what that research project will be, and then also be able to get into it in a little bit more detail when you have room in kind of next level application processes. So that basically covers the broad strokes for elements of an application. Do any of you, Alex, Raman, Corinne, have anything else to add? Neha? Corinne, yeah.
Yes, I think one element of the application that is also important, and it's also very important for the for funding, is to have a convincing demonstration of the reason why you have chosen a specific lab, department, or faculty. And especially, I think at the postdoc stage, I think it's important to relate your work to the work of others and beyond only one person, beyond only one supervisor. So but now I think it's important to go beyond that and to show how you'll be able to interact with this team. And again, beyond only your own specific project.
Great, yes, thanks. Very good advice.
I was curious if I could speak with the postdocs of I have seen, and I know it's more in tenure track, but I have, I think, seen in at least one postdoc, even a statement of EDII and what your contributions have been towards equity, depending on your discipline or where the postdoc is positioned. And I know more and more, if you're looking towards the faculty positions, that will be a requirement in the future when you apply. Maybe drafting your own statement for diversity, or looking at other examples of that from other faculty members of how that's done might prepare for the future, but I'm not sure how many people are seeing that in their applications. I think it might be something in the future.
Yeah, I think in NSERC applications, there is a part that they will let you highlight on this, like share experience about inclusion and how this is important for research environment. And yeah, this is really very important piece. Yeah.
Also, I would like to add that we try to write a generic research statement or letter of intent explaining about only our experience, so or our research work. So instead of that, I would also like to advise that write maybe a small paragraph about the work what they are doing, and also if you could add that how could you even contribute in their work, how could you be useful for their work. I think that's a good way to write a research proposal.
Sorry, I like that, putting your skill set forward, right up front of what you are capable of doing to highlight that. I think is a nice suggestion.
How can you be helpful for them? That is what they're looking for, right? Ultimately.
Agreed.
Yeah, kind of on that note, that's a great way to structure your application. And then, and this is something we've mentioned in the past, but then when it comes to the interview, that's when it becomes more of a discussion about whether you want the position as well. But absolutely, that's the best way of thinking about the application.
Should we move on to questions and considerations? What do you think was me?
Yes.
Thank you. So just a reminder that we will send this PowerPoint as a PDF to all of you, so don't worry about jotting these down, but think about them as I'm reading them over. Questions and considerations of when you're thinking about your postdoc, of like what are, and we've said this one, what are the advisor's expectations of the postdoc? A great question to have and when you're speaking with them. Will the advisor or the postdoc determine the research program? How many postdocs has the advisor had? Where did they go afterwards, right? Never hurts to talk to a current postdoc that is working with a supervisor about their current experience and how you would work with them. Will the advisor have time for mentoring, both research and career mentoring in particular, or should you seek out other mentors, maybe people that might have a different objective field of where you should be going? How many others, graduate student, staff, postdocs currently work for this advisor? If they have a huge number of people on their team, will you get much time with them? If they have a small number in their team, will you get more? Will there be opportunities for personal development? I'm going to call that professional development as well. Strengthening skills that you may need after the fellowship is over. So are they investing in you as much as you're investing in their team? Next slide, please. Will you be involved in grant writing? This is an awesome time to sharpen your grant writing skills while you're doing a postdoc. Will you be teaching or mentoring other members of the research team? I'm glad I hadn't memorized them all yet, thanks to how long is the financial support guaranteed, right? Is it a year? Is it renewable? How long will you have in terms of financial support? And under what circumstances is that? Is it based on a grant and whether or not it will be approved? Is it guaranteed funding that's coming from elsewhere? As a postdoc, be inquisitive about where the funding comes from to support your role. Can I count on help in finding a career, right? What is there faculty, government, or industrial opportunities after completing a postdoc? And I noticed in the chat before comments about, what do you do postdoc if you don't end up in a faculty role? Broaden your perspectives. Yes, faculty is absolutely an amazing goal to go towards, but we know that there are not as many positions open and available for the number of people that are leaving their PhDs. So where can you think progressively and in an alternative way about finding your feet? In government, in industry, in not-for-profit? There's lots of opportunities with your skill sets and brilliance. Will the advisor have adequate research funds to support your proposed research? Not just funding you, but does the research experiment itself have funding in order to help you do your experiment, make your publications, and move on to your next steps? What resources will you have? What space will you be given? What equipment would you be provided? Right? So lots of good questions to ask that are discipline or maybe research specific. And then what is the publishing record of the lab or the supervisor like? How many first authored papers does the PI have? And that might be discipline specific. I'm learning in astroparticle physics, it's alphabetical. I think unless there is an extreme lead or somebody who is taking on the project, but there's not a lot of, moving around when you have, multiple dozens of people on a project, and so you put it all on alphabetically. But it is something to ask yourself, knowing your discipline, how the publications are evaluated, how your supervisor or the research group might help to elevate your publication record, how you can contribute to that elevation, should all be in amongst the questions that you would have when thinking about your postdoc with a group or a research supervisor. Are there any other questions or considerations from our postdocs, ones that is ringing in your ears or you wish you had asked when you started?
Well, actually, you put it like really nicely. Now, when you're like going through the question, I was like, I wish I had this list before.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, you covered it all.
Yeah.
You didn't leave us even a point to mention. That's amazing. Yeah.
I'll
I
ask.
I think we missed some of these, yeah, while we were choosing for the first thing. Yes, you have
Yeah.
covered it very nicely.
Thank you. How about this? I thought about this just now. What's the cost of living in the town that you're going to be moving to do this postdoc? Are there opportunities for your spouses or your partners when they come here? Is there childcare available for you, or are you on a wait list as soon as you get here? Think about all the things beyond your research to support your life outside of work that are important to you when you make these decisions as well.
Maybe one little consideration regarding the funding. We all know how funding is important, but at the postdoc stage, the difference with the PhD is that often your position, it's a precondition to have the funding. So it's not an academic program that you apply, you registered and you start doing courses, and then you apply to have funding, like a PhD or a master's degree. Usually you have to secure your own funding before starting the position, and it's often a precondition. So I think that it's important to have this in mind.
Absolutely. And I would like to add to this, that's the justification why you really need to think about all of this, like really time ahead, like 2 years, because there is a lot of things to really take care of, many things to consider, like beside your research, how your life will look like, and all of this. So yeah, and it needs at least 1 year to go through all of this. And as Karen once said, on when you build your application, you really have like all of this in your mind when you like start the funding, let's say if it's your application through NSERC or other association. So you will have the numbers, what exactly you will be giving and for how long it will be there. And you will be able like to really have it in mind, like, is that where I want to go? Or should I look into something else, or maybe secure more funding, have a discussion with my PI about this, about that. So having this all ahead of time will really help.
And on that note as well, if you are thinking about a postdoc in another country, then you're traveling with a spouse and family, really knowing the ins and outs of your visa, what you're allowed to do in that country work-wise, because there are often limits on whether or not you can take on other even temporary speaking opportunities, whether your partner is legally able to work or whether they also might have to apply for a work permit. So if you're thinking that, you know, we'll have a dual income situation when we move, there might be some restrictions around whether or not your partner can start working immediately or not, depending on where you go. So I think these are all considerations that you would want to have well ahead of actually moving to the other country, and just knowing ahead of time in case someone does offer you the chance to maybe give a guest lecture somewhere and you think what a fantastic opportunity, and you might accept, and then come to find out that because of your visa, you're only allowed to do work for your home institution, let's say. So these are all things that you might want to know before accepting a position.
Absolutely. And I do, if I may interrupt, just my colleague Mark in the chat, I think, did put in a really important point that I do want to highlight to everybody, that in some instances for postdocs, the salary is negotiable. It does depend on the funding. It does depend on the researcher. That is something to ask. Is this negotiable? But I do like Mark's comment here of, although cost of living can be a factor as to why you might be asking for more money, when you negotiate, use your negotiation skills, amplifying your skill sets and experience, not the fact that it's an expensive place to live. Tell them that you're worth more money.
Yeah, like, and I have resources where like you can almost map skills and experience to kind of the pay scales. And so you need to make the case like why hiring me is not the same as hiring somebody without that experience, because that is basically the only thing that you have any power on which to argue for more money. Like any cost of living, for example, it's like that's baked in, like it is what it is. That's not, it doesn't tell me why I should pay you more than the next person, right? Yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Alex.
I love a good negotiation, especially when it's about salaries. So I also see a really good question from Jasmine in the chat. What is the timeline of securing funding versus applying for positions? Do those usually happen simultaneously, sequentially? And again, I'm going to guess it depends on discipline, the grant, and where you're going. But if there's anyone that has a comment on that based on their own personal experience or suggestions that they want to throw in the chat, do please do that, so that we will just go through the other slides and then we'll come back to those questions more broadly. And I see, Jill, a good question as well that we should come back to later as well.
So yeah, I think at this point we can touch fairly briefly on some of the major federal funding opportunities that are here in Canada. So the three main tri-agency fellowships for postdocs come from NSERC, CIHR, and the Social Sciences and Humanities. Sorry, I'm now giving you the full name of SSHRC. The others, gosh, I'm going to forget them. Alex, National Science and Engineering Research Council.
Natural Science and Engineering Research Council and Council Health Research. I can't remember the I.
I can't remember the I either. So sorry about that. So those are the three main areas of focus for the federal awards. They have different deadlines each year. They also offer different, they each offer about $45,000 or $40,000 per year. And that's for 2 years max typically, but you can find a lot more detailed information about those in the links that have just been added to the, oh, and yes, I see that it's Canadian Institutions of Health Research. Thank you. Yes, so those are all links that you can use to find out a lot more specifics about the individual deadlines for each fellowship opportunity. Some involve internal deadlines. So for instance, the CIHR fellowships here at Queen's, we have an internal procedure that we follow. So it's not just that you apply directly to CIHR. We receive those applications and there's some internal processing that happens, which also means that the more you look on the websites, the more you understand the applications through and through, the better you'll have a sense of the timing of everything, and you'll be aware of all of the various deadlines that come up. So that's really, really important that you look through the guidelines, look through the applications, look through the eligibility requirements. I believe both NSERC and SSHRC are available to Canadian citizens and permanent residents and protected people only, whereas CIHR is open to international candidates. So there are some variations as well with these three awards, and I encourage you to look into them. They're really wonderful opportunities, competitive, but really fantastic federal awards that are open to postdocs. So I encourage you to check out the links, and you can also, we'll go through some of the way that these fellowships are assessed. I'll give you kind of a breakdown of how the reviewers take into account the application materials and how they weigh individual elements. But for the most information out there about these fellowships, I would suggest that you go to the website, and if you have really specific questions, you can always email me. Also contact your supervisor, see if you know anyone who's had these fellowships, talk to them, and talk to supervisors who have had fellows supported by these tri-agency fellowships. And we'll also talk about the Banting postdoc fellowships as well. Okay.
Me?
Yes.
Right. And I want to echo that completely. Talking to an individual like yourself at a School of Graduate Studies, talking to a program officer at tri-agencies about these, understanding internal deadlines and external deadlines, so important. But utilize the folks like ourselves, like Nina or other program officers. That's their job, to help you, to support you in this pathway. So when you're thinking about NSERC, if you're thinking about NSERC, and even if you're not thinking about NSERC, understanding what your other postdoc colleagues go through when they get their postdocs is a useful term in terms of your networking skills and who you're working with, I think. And thinking too about cross-disciplinary work, I think it's important to know how your colleagues have gotten to where they are. So regardless of whether you're NSERC bound or not, when they evaluate some of the main criteria, the first one that is obviously the most heavy is your research ability and potential. Right. So the quality of contributions to research and development that you have made thus far, the relevance of work experience and academic training to the field of proposed research, the significance, feasibility, and the merit of the proposed research, and justification for the location of tenure. So you're proposing to work somewhere with a group for NSERC for the most part. Scholarships and awards that you've held in the past, the duration of your graduate studies, and also consider it too that maybe you took a break. Maybe there's a rationale that there was longer time for your master's or PhD. That's not, not doing it in 2 or 4 years is not make or break. And then the ability to think critically as well, and that would be demonstrated in your written application. Next slide, please. All right, so the other 30% of NSERC applications would be more around the communication, interpersonal, and leadership abilities, right? So the ability of yourself or the ability or the potential to communicate scientific concepts clearly and logically in written and oral formats. For example, this could include the quality of the application's presentation, participation in preparing publications, and awards for oral presentations or papers. Sign yourself up for giving paper talks, awards, things like that. Those all count when you're applying later on for your postdoc. The other piece around communication, interpersonal, and leadership abilities is the professional and relevant extracurricular interactions and collaborations that you've had through your graduate career. This could include mentoring, teaching, supervisory experience, project management, chairing of committees, organizing conferences and meetings, elected positions held. Some of you may have started clubs, organizations. We have a phenomenal group called Gemini P, which is Gender Minority in Physics, that was started by a PhD and a postdoc student that came out of MI. Things like that can go on your CV and these applications as well.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Alex. So just to quickly go over some of the ways the CIHR selection criteria are weighted. 60% of that application package is really looking at and weighing your achievements and activities of you as a scholar. So looking at your training expectations, what you hope to achieve while you are a postdoc, your plan of research, any academic distinctions you've received during your PhD and even before, as well as your publications and research achievements. So you really want to be highlighting some really significant publications maybe you've been a part of or a single authored, and making sure whatever awards, academic awards you received are really highlighted and you can draw those out. Then about 20% is focusing on your sponsor's assessment of the candidate's characteristics and abilities. This is really focusing on your references and how strongly they're able to speak to you as a candidate. Again, like we've talked about in the past, it's really important for you to have a really good relationship with your referees as much as you can so that they're able to speak to you on a more personal level and really articulate how unique you are as a researcher. And then finally, another 20% is about the research training environment. So assessing your potential supervisor's research environment, the training opportunities you will be given while you're a postdoc, what facilities are accessible to you. So here again at Queen's, for example, the reviewers will be looking at something like the Expanding Horizons workshop series, knowing that the School of Graduate Studies provides all of these resources for you to train more broadly as a researcher, as a scholar, helping you with professional development activities, and really that the institution is there for you on so many different levels. So that's an important thing to mention as well with CIHR and with other federal funding opportunities as well. And we'll quickly go through some of this SSHRC selections criteria as well. Again, this is weighted in different categories. So about 20% looks at the challenge and the aim and importance of your project, focusing a lot on the originality and potential significance of your proposed research. They really want to see that you are looking at something either in a new way or a topic that hasn't really been considered before, that you're really doing groundbreaking work, and then that's why this project of yours needs to be funded. And then combined with that, it also needs to be doable. So 30% of your application will be considered on the feasibility side of things. So making sure that your plan to achieve excellence is actually doable. That will include the appropriateness of the intended place of tenure. So making sure that you've actually chosen an appropriate institution to host the work that you're going to do, which will include things like any sort of lab facilities that you'll need. So you need to articulate that they're there so you can do the work that you want to do. Actually, with SSHRC, maybe not lab facilities, but and then also the effectiveness of the overall support provided by the host institution. So again, something like the Expanding Horizons series here at Queen's. Also focusing on SSHRC, the final 50% is about capability. So the expertise that you have to succeed. So again, looking at your CV, the fellowships that you've had, scholarships and other awards, your previous research experience and publications, and the timely completion of your doctoral studies. I know that's a lot of pressure for people, but it is something that these agencies consider when looking at you as a candidate. Then considering the nature of the program and relevant personal circumstances that may have delayed the applicant's academic career. So you do have the opportunity to explain any delays that may have caused your doctoral work to run a little bit longer than anticipated. So they do give you the opportunity to write an explanation for that. So I understand that it's a lot of pressure to finish your doctoral work in a timely fashion, but they do leave room for you to justify any delays. So a final point about adapting your proposal to the SSHRC training priorities. These are some pieces to consider: that you will build both academic, so that's research and teaching competencies, and general professional skills while you're a fellow, including knowledge mobilization that's transferable to a whole range of settings. Again, kind of to the point of what Alex was speaking about in terms of collaboration, including international or intersectoral opportunities wherever possible. So working with colleagues in other fields, they really want to see that cross-pollination happening, and then including specific effective mentoring and institutional support. So these are just some pieces of advice that we can offer for these federal funding agencies. And I really encourage you to go to their websites to find more information. And finally, we can talk about the Banting Postdoctoral Fellowship, which is really one of the most prestigious federal awards that are given to postdocs here in Canada. You can take them abroad, so you don't have to stay in Canada to get a Banting Postdoctoral Fellowship. The way they're evaluated is by those same tri-agency groups. So you're lumped in with your colleagues in either SSHRC disciplines, CIHR, or NSERC. You don't have to be a Canadian citizen to apply. So it's both open to anyone from around the world, and also you can take the postdoc fellowship anywhere in the world. I will say though, that they discourage you from taking a Banting postdoc to the same institution where you received your PhD. So you do need to think about when you're applying for a Banting, that if you do really feel like the best place for you to continue your research is the place where you did your PhD, you need to be able to justify that really, really well. So that is a consideration. They look at, in terms of evaluation criteria, research excellence and leadership in the research domain, the quality of your proposed research, and then the support that you'll receive from the institution where you're hoping to take the Banting. So here are some characteristics of successful applications. As an applicant, you'll demonstrate leadership and impact in the field, in considering where you are in your career as well. So they do factor that in. You'll need to show that you have a significant publication record, and depending on your field, single author preferable, and that you'll bring new insight, new knowledge to the institution where you're taking the Banting. So you want to also have something to offer to this host institution. It's not so much just about you being the trainee, but also that you're there to really contribute to that host institution. And in terms of your proposed research, it's really about creating a project, or proposing a project that is really advancing the field. So advancing the knowledge based, that is somewhat novel, as game-changing as possible, as part of a larger research context, and demonstrate synergy with the research environment at the institution. You also want to think about the wide impact of your project. This is not something that's just going to create ripples in your field specifically. This is a project that's really going to have a global impact. They're looking at people who are going to be research leaders of the future. So you're not proposing a project that maybe your closest colleagues will think is really revolutionary. You really want it to have a big impact. And again, highlighting the importance of your references. They should be familiar with your work, have interacted with you in the past, and there will also be a neutral or arm's length referee that you'll need to consider as well. So there's more information about all of this on the Banting website. Each institution might have their own, will have their own date, so you'll need to look into where you want to take the Banting Fellowship and find the website for that institution that will give you more specifics. And yeah, we'll now talk about MyTax, which is another fantastic opportunity.
We will, and I'm going to highlight it because it's actually come up in the chat just a few moments before while you were speaking. As you know, if you're someone that's finishing up and postdocs, you haven't been planning 2 years in advance, you're looking for a next step, or if you're coming out of a postdoc and you're looking for something, I do strongly encourage you to consider MyTax. This program has grown leaps and bounds since I first started seeing it 10 years ago when I started my PhD. MyTax was originally started to find jobs for math students. They were having great difficulty upon the completion of their degrees to translate their skills into the workplace. And it has grown out substantially since then. Started in STEM, it has now grown into SSHRC, CIHR territory as well. So do not feel bound by it to be within the STEM disciplines. This is really now for everyone to be looking at. They claim it's simple and straightforward. And when I talked to Kristen Sprong, who is the MyTax representative from Queens, and in my engagements with her in the past, I would say that this is a program where you get a significant amount of support from a MyTax specialist when you're even planning writing your application. They do reviews with you before you submit your application as well. So it can be simple and straightforward in that sense. They give you a template, a detailed guideline. They give you the access to this grant officer that I just mentioned. And the review process takes about 6 to 8 weeks. It's non-competitive for the Accelerate. That's a particular type of MyTax program. There are multiple MyTax pieces in the background. But there's also high success rates for this. There's grant writing experience, there's professional experience. So I do encourage you to look at the MyTax website. Many of their programs follow the same vein as Accelerate. And there are specified ones for postdoc callouts and even job listings on there as well for postdocs of positions that are already open but not yet filled. So if you are short on time but considering a postdoc or considering a different type of postdoc, really do check out the MyTax and do speak to either Kristen. And I do believe actually Kristen's replacement at the moment is Michael, but Kristen will be back next month after a mat leave. So there is a Queen's representative still in place, but they will be handing it back off to our representative very soon. And I'll just, my last point on it, and again, to that expansion, like what do you do postdoc? Is it tenure faculty or is it elsewhere? MyTax helps you to gain experience within industry, to get your first taste if you've not worked in this area before. They also have opportunities within industry and government as well. So great space to explore and a good way if you're looking, I think, to try outside of academia to link up with some of those partners that co-fund your MyTax postdoc. Moving on. Yeah, where we are, we're into the fun bits now. And this again will come better to you when we have the PDF to send out after this event. Just by registering, you will receive this from us. But these are links identifying opportunities that Nina and I and other members of SGS have thrown together for you, just as a sampling and a taster. And there's 2 slides here that really do push. One, of course, the non-academic partners, I just hit MyTax. It's okay, we'll keep where you're at. And then other ones as well. And I'm selfishly promoting the McDonald Institute website, which was built by us for a recruitment tool, which is where we post a lot of opportunities for astrophysics across Canada. But there's also many other organizations that post positions and opportunities that are discipline or cross-disciplinarily specific. So When you find one, share it with us, with your colleagues. When you get a postdoc from one of these exciting places, tell us, because we want to know where you end up and the great things that you do. And yeah, let's continue this conversation in this network here, because I'd like to open it up. Maybe the next one is the thank you and the questions. Thank you to Nina. Thank you to our postdocs, Raman, Kareen, Nina, Neha, excuse me. And thank you very much for all of you who have been putting pieces into the chat to continue the conversation. Let's pick up with some open questions or feedback further from our postdocs in our last 10 or so minutes. Max, in the background, I know at a certain point we do have a quick feedback poll that we would greatly appreciate you clicking before you leave. Maybe, Max, just because people might be pressed on time while we're entering questions, may I please ask you to put it out? Thank you. And I'll turn it over to our colleagues, postdocs, or questions otherwise. And thank you all for joining us for this presentation.